I found my wife of 5 years in our bed with her ex, Ryan. The worst part wasn't walking in on them, it was the look in her eyes, no guilt, no shame, just annoyance at being caught. That night, as I packed my bags, Olivia told me I had always been her safe choice while Ryan was her true love. She married me for stability and my business connections, using me to help her family's company. I died that night in a car crash, only to wake up 7 years in the past, the day before we first met. This time around, I used what I knew to build my fortune and watch her make the same choices. When she finally saw my true worth, she begged for another chance, but by then I had already walked away. I found my wife of 5 years in our bed with her ex, Ryan. The worst part wasn't walking in on them, it was the look in her eyes. No guilt, no shame, just annoyance at being caught. That night, as I packed my bags, Olivia told me I had always been her safe choice while Ryan was her true love. She married me for stability and my business connections, using me to help her family's company. The rain pelted against the windows as I stood in the doorway of our bedroom, frozen in place. 5 years of marriage shattered in an instant. Olivia's eyes met mine over Ryan's shoulder, wide with shock but not regret. "Alex, wait. It's not what you think," she started, but I was already turning away. I walked downstairs to the kitchen, my mind oddly calm despite the hurricane raging inside me. The granite counter felt cool beneath my palms as I leaned against it, trying to steady myself. I heard their hushed voices upstairs, followed by hurried footsteps. The front door opened and closed. Ryan was gone, but the damage was irreversible. When Olivia finally came downstairs, her hair was fixed and her clothes straightened, as if erasing the evidence would somehow undo what I had seen. She found me sitting at our dining table, the wedding photo we had once proudly displayed now face down. "We need to talk about this like adults," she said, her voice steady and controlled. 5 years together, and I knew that tone. It was her business negotiation voice. "There's nothing to talk about," I replied. "I saw everything I needed to see," she sighed, an actress preparing for her most important scene. "It wasn't planned, Alex. These things just happen. Ryan and I have history." "History," I repeated, tasting the bitterness of the word. "The same history you told me was completely over when we got engaged." "People change, feelings change," she said, not even attempting to deny it. I stood up and walked to our bedroom to pack a bag. She followed me, watching from the doorway as I methodically filled a suitcase with clothes and essentials. She didn't try to stop me, she didn't beg me to stay. Instead, she watched with arms crossed, her eyes calculating. "Where will you go?" she asked, not out of concern but curiosity. "Does it matter?" A flash of irritation crossed her face. "Don't be dramatic, Alex. This doesn't have to be the end of us. Many couples work through affairs." I paused, a folded shirt in my hands. "Is that what you want, to work through this?" She hesitated just a second too long, and I had my answer. "You were always just convenient, Alex," she said finally, her voice cold. "Ryan was always the one. You were stable, safe, but never exciting enough." The truth I had suspected for years finally laid bare. I continued packing while she launched into a speech about practicality and how we could still benefit from staying married. Her family's business needed my connections. A divorce would be messy. Think of appearances. I zipped the suitcase shut, cutting off her monologue. "How long has it been going on?" she shrugged, as if the question was irrelevant. "Does it matter? It's been the whole time, hasn't it?" I asked, a sudden clarity washing over me. "You never stopped seeing him." Her silence was confirmation enough. As I carried my suitcase downstairs, memories flooded back. The late-night work emergencies. The weekends I spent alone while she visited her sick aunt. The mysterious text messages she would quickly hide when I entered the room. Outside, the rain had intensified, matching my darkening mood. I threw my suitcase into the trunk of my car and sat behind the wheel, water streaming down the windshield. Through the blur, I could see Olivia watching from the doorway, not bothering to step into the rain to stop me. I drove aimlessly through the stormy night, highways blending together as I relived our relationship from the beginning. How we'd met in college. Me, the scholarship kid with big dreams but empty pockets. Her, from old money, popular and seemingly out of my league. I remembered thinking myself the luckiest man alive when she chose me. Her family had looked down their noses at me during our first meeting, making it clear they thought she could do better. But Olivia had insisted I was the one she wanted, and I had believed her completely. Our wedding day flashed before my eyes. Her father's reluctant walk down the aisle, her mother's tight smile in all the photos. They'd paid for an extravagant ceremony, not as a gift to us but as a statement to their social circle. "Look how generous we are, even to someone so beneath our daughter." On the rain-slicked highway, I barely noticed my speed increasing. My phone kept buzzing with texts from Olivia, not apologies but practical concerns about bills and appearances, and when I would get over this and come home, I scrolled through the messages at a stoplight, each one more calculating than the last. The final text made my blood run cold. Ryan thinks we should all sit down and talk this through like adults. After all, you're still useful to us. Us. They were already a unit again, making plans that included me only as a useful accessory. The light turned green. I accelerated harder than necessary, tires spinning slightly on the wet asphalt. Rain was coming down in sheets now, reducing visibility to nearly nothing. I should have pulled over, but anger and betrayal pushed me forward. Headlights appeared suddenly around a curve, coming straight toward me in my lane. A truck had hydroplaned across the median. I swerved instinctively, my car fishtailing. The guardrail approached rapidly. My last thought before impact wasn't of Olivia or even anger, it was oddly peaceful. A realization that perhaps this was freedom from a lie I had been living for years. Metal crunched against metal, glass shattered. My body jerked against the seatbelt as the world spun around me. Then darkness consumed everything. I woke up gasping for air, tangled in familiar sheets. My head throbbed as I sat up, disoriented and confused. This wasn't a hospital room. It was my old apartment from college. The small, cramped studio I had lived in before moving in with Olivia. Sunlight filtered through thin curtains I hadn't seen in years. My heart raced as I looked around. Everything was exactly as I remembered it. The second-hand desk piled with textbooks, the mini fridge humming in the corner, the peeling poster of a band I no longer listened to. I reached for my phone on the nightstand, nearly knocking over a half-empty energy drink. The date on the screen made me freeze. February 15th, 7 years in the past. The day before I would meet Olivia at that campus coffee shop. At first, I thought I was dreaming. A vivid hallucination brought on by trauma, or perhaps this was what dying felt like. My fingers trembled as I unlocked the phone and scrolled through my contacts. No Olivia, no in-laws, just college friends and a few professors. I stumbled to the bathroom and stared at my reflection. My younger face looked back at me, unmarked by the stress lines that had formed during my marriage. My hair was longer, my body leaner from surviving on student meals rather than business lunches. "This can't be real," I whispered, splashing cold water on my face. But the sensation was too vivid, too consistent to be a dream. I spent the next hour testing this new reality. I checked my student email, finding unread messages from 7 years ago. My bank account showed the pitiful balance of my scholarship money. My calendar reminded me of a programming project due next week, a project I faintly remembered completing. As the day progressed, the constancy of detail convinced me of the impossible. Somehow I had been given a second chance. I had returned to the pivotal moment before my life became entangled with Olivia's. I wandered around campus in a daze, half expecting to wake up at any moment. Students passed by, some vaguely familiar faces from a life I had already lived. I sat on a bench near the computer science building, watching people go about their day, unaware of the temporal anomaly in their midst. My phone buzzed with a text from my roommate Mike, asking if I was coming to the study group tonight. Mike, who in my previous life had gradually drifted away after I started dating Olivia. She had never liked him, calling him immature and a bad influence. Now I remembered how he had warned me about her, saying something felt off about her interest in me. I texted back that I would be there, a simple decision that already diverged from my first path. Last time I had skipped the study group to prepare for my accidental meeting with Olivia the next day. After class, I found myself walking to the coffee shop where fate had originally introduced us. According to my memories, Olivia wasn't supposed to be there today. Our meet-cute had been scheduled for tomorrow. But some compulsion drew me there regardless. I ordered a coffee and sat at a corner table, laptop open but screen ignored as I surveyed the room. And then, impossibly, she walked in, Olivia, 7 years younger but unmistakable. Her confident stride, the way she tucked her hair behind her ear as she ordered, the slight tilt of her head as she checked her phone. My stomach clenched at the sight of her, a confusing mix of attraction and revulsion washing over me. She hadn't noticed me yet, and I had a moment to observe her unawares. There was a calculated precision to her movements that I had once mistaken for grace. The way her eyes scanned the room, assessing each person's value. The practiced smile she gave the barista, then her gaze landed on me, lingered for a moment and moved on. No recognition, of course. In this timeline, we hadn't met. But I saw something in that brief glance that I had missed the first time. Evaluation. Like a predator sizing up potential prey, she took her coffee and left, never knowing that the man in the corner had already lived and died by her betrayal. I returned to my apartment that evening, mind racing with possibilities. I could avoid her completely, chart a different course, or I could rewrite our story on my terms. I pulled out a notebook and began to make notes. Market trends I remembered, tech startups that had exploded in value, investment opportunities that had emerged over the next few years. Knowledge was power, and I had 7 years of it. By midnight, I had outlined a new future for myself. One where I would still meet Olivia but approach our relationship with open eyes. I would use my foreknowledge not just for financial gain, but to understand what had made me so vulnerable the first time around. I needed to know if what we had was ever real or if I had simply been a mark from the beginning. And I needed her to experience the same pain she had inflicted on me. The study group text thread lit up my phone as my friends celebrated solving a particularly difficult coding problem. Friends I had abandoned for Olivia, a life I had set aside. Tomorrow I would begin reclaiming it all. As I lay in bed that night, staring at the ceiling, I made my decision. I wouldn't avoid her completely. I would let us meet, let her think she was weaving her web around me. But this time I would be the one in control. Sleep eluded me as I planned my approach. The original meeting had been a classic meet cute. She had accidentally spilled her coffee on my laptop, insisted on paying for repairs, and somehow walked away with my number. I had been so flattered by her attention that I never questioned the coincidence. Now I wondered if it had been staged from the start. Had she researched me beforehand? Known about my growing reputation in the computer science department, targeted me specifically. Tomorrow I would find out. I would follow the script to a point, then deviate just enough to throw her off balance. To make her work for my attention rather than assuming it was guaranteed. Morning arrived after a fitful sleep filled with dreams of car crashes and betrayal. I dressed with care, selecting clothes that I knew accentuated my features better than my original slovenly student attire had. Armed with my knowledge of the future and Olivia's true nature, I headed to the coffee shop. The scene was set exactly as I remembered it, the same barista, the same crowded morning rush. I took my usual table near the window, setting up my laptop just as I had before. Right on schedule, Olivia entered, that same calculated scan of the room, the same path that would bring her past my table. My heart hammered in my chest as the moment approached. This was it. The beginning of 5 years of lies or the start of something entirely different. My fingers hovered over my keyboard, typing nothing as I waited for the accident that would change the course of my life once more. I could rewrite my story starting now. And this time I would be the author of my own fate. When I accidentally bumped into Olivia at the coffee shop, I was ready. The moment played out almost exactly as before. She approached my table, cup of coffee in hand, poised for the staged collision. But this time, I shifted slightly at the last second, causing her to spill only a few drops on the table instead of drenching my laptop. "Oh, I'm so sorry," she said, her practiced look of mortification in place. Instead of stammering apologies and offering to buy her a new drink like before, I smiled confidently, handed her a napkin, and returned to my work. She lingered, clearly thrown off script. "I should at least buy you another coffee," she suggested, using the same line that had worked on me the first time. "No need," I replied without looking up. "I've got a full cup right here." I could feel her recalibrating, unused to being dismissed. "I'm Olivia," she finally said, extending her hand. I looked up then, meeting her gaze directly. "Alex," I replied, shaking her hand briefly before returning to my laptop. She stood there awkwardly for a moment longer. "Well, nice to meet you, Alex. Maybe I'll see you around campus." "Maybe," I agreed, my tone non-committal. Only then did I give her a smile, one that suggested interest but made no promises. As she walked away, I heard her ask the barista who I was, just as she had the first time. But now she was the one pursuing information, not me eagerly offering it up. "Don't I get your number?" she called after me as I packed up to leave. I turned back. "You'll find me if you want to," and she did. 3 days later, she happened to attend a campus tech showcase where I was presenting a project. She approached afterward, complimenting my work with surprising specificity. "You've done your research," I noted, watching her eyes widen slightly at being caught. "I was impressed," she admitted. "Computer science isn't my field, but even I could tell your algorithm has commercial applications." This time, I accepted her invitation for coffee. Over the following weeks, I let our relationship develop, but I maintained a careful distance. I was attentive enough to keep her interested, focused enough on my own goals to make her work for my attention. I used my foreknowledge to accelerate my career path. I built the app that had taken me 2 years to develop in my previous life, completing it in just 6 months. I approached the right investors, avoided the dead-end partnerships, and positioned myself as a rising tech entrepreneur before graduation. By the time we'd been dating for a year, I was already more successful than I'd been after 5 years in my previous life. I had secured seed funding for my startup, focusing on a security solution I knew would be in high demand in the coming years. Olivia's attraction grew in proportion to my bank account and connections. I watched her shift from seeing me as an interesting diversion to a valuable asset. She introduced me to her family much earlier than she had before. Her father, a tech venture capitalist who had once looked down his nose at me, now courted my favor. "You've got a good eye for market gaps," he told me during a dinner at their estate. "We should talk about potential synergies with some of our portfolio companies." I smiled and agreed to a meeting, knowing exactly which of his investments were headed for trouble and which would thrive. I used this information strategically, cementing my reputation as someone with almost supernatural business instincts. Throughout it all, I kept Olivia at a calculated distance emotionally. I was the perfect boyfriend on paper. Thoughtful gifts, memorable dates, supportive of her career in publishing. But I never gave her the full vulnerability she had exploited before. She noticed, of course. "Sometimes I feel like you're holding back," she said one night as we lay in bed, her head on my chest. "Like there's a part of you I can't reach." "Everyone has private corners of themselves," I replied, stroking her hair while keeping my thoughts carefully guarded. My emotional detachment only made her try harder. The hunter in her couldn't resist the challenge of capturing what seemed just out of reach. What I hadn't counted on was discovering the depth of her original betrayal. At a party celebrating my company's first major contract, I overheard a conversation that chilled me to the bone. Olivia's friend Melissa, drunk on expensive champagne, cornered me on the balcony. "You know she wasn't sure about you at first," she slurred, glass dangling precariously from her fingers. "Oh," I prompted, sensing something important. "She was still hung up on Ryan back then. They were on a break when she met you." Melissa leaned in conspiratorially. "Your tech connections were useful for her family's business. Ryan always joked that you were her long-term investment." I smiled and bought another round of drinks, even as my heart hardened further. It confirmed what I had suspected. Our entire relationship had been transactional from the start. The next day, I used this information to accelerate my plans. I shifted investments, secured patents that I knew would be valuable to Olivia's family's business, and began creating a position that would make me indispensable to them while protecting myself from betrayal. As our second anniversary approached, Olivia began hinting at marriage, much earlier than in our previous timeline. "We make such a good team," she said, reviewing the quarterly reports from my now thriving company. "Imagine what we could build together with our families united." I played along, letting her think she was steering our relationship toward her goal. But I was the one in control now. I proposed on her birthday with a ring far more extravagant than what I could have afforded in my original timeline. The look of triumph in her eyes as she said yes might have been mistaken for love by my former self. Now I recognized it for what it was. Acquisition. We set a date for the following year, giving me time to secure my position and prepare for the endgame. Throughout our engagement, I watched her carefully, noting the patterns that had been invisible to me before. The subtle ways she manipulated situations. The careful management of my relationships with others in her circle. Most telling were her reactions when I occasionally tested her by prioritizing my business over her plans. The flash of calculation before the display of hurt. The way she adjusted her approach rather than expressing genuine disappointment. I was no longer blind to the performance. And as I predicted, within months of our engagement, the other player returned to the stage. Ryan contacted Olivia about a consulting opportunity with his new venture capital firm. "Just business," she assured me, an old friend needing her expertise. I encouraged her to take the meeting, watching as surprise and suspicion battled in her eyes. The old Alex would have been jealous, possessive. My apparent confidence threw her off balance. "You trust me that much?" she asked. "Completely," I lied, giving her the rope with which she would eventually hang herself. As I built my success story, I made sure to document everything, every achievement, every strategic success. I cultivated relationships with key people in our industry, building a network that existed completely independent of Olivia's family connections. The groundwork was laid. The pieces were in position. All that remained was to wait for Olivia and Ryan to make their inevitable move, while I prepared for a checkmate they would never see coming. 3 years into our relationship, right on schedule, Ryan reappeared. Just as before, Olivia claimed he was just an old friend who needed her help with a business venture. A startup he was funding needed a marketing strategy, and who better than his talented former classmate? "You should take the opportunity," I said when she hesitantly mentioned the offer over dinner. "Sounds like good exposure." She studied my face, searching for signs of jealousy or insecurity. Finding none, she relaxed slightly. "Are you sure you're okay with it? I know he's my ex." I shrugged, spearing a piece of steak. "That was years ago. We're engaged now. I trust you." The word trust hung between us like bait. She took it with a grateful smile and a squeeze of my hand. "I love how secure you are." Most men would be threatened. Most men hadn't lived through her betrayal already. Over the following weeks, I monitored their interactions through various means. The late-night texts she thought I didn't notice. The lunch meetings that stretched into drinks. The gradual emotional affair that was building toward its physical conclusion. What surprised me was Olivia's apparent internal conflict. Unlike before, she seemed genuinely torn between us. My success and emotional distance had created something I hadn't anticipated. Real feelings. I caught her watching me sometimes with an expression close to wonder. "I never thought I'd find someone like you," she said one night as we prepared for a charity gala. "Someone who understands ambition and doesn't try to dim my light." For a brief moment, I allowed myself to wonder if things could be different this time, if perhaps my changes had altered her path as well. But then her phone buzzed with a text from Ryan, and I watched her face light up in a way it rarely did for me. Some patterns couldn't be broken. Some people couldn't change their nature. The first time Olivia canceled our dinner plans for an emergency meeting with Ryan and his investors, I didn't call her out. Instead, I used the evening to finalize deals that would secure my financial independence from her family's influence. By our 4th anniversary, my company had expanded internationally. I had carefully structured ownership so that while Olivia's family had benefited from our association, they had no actual control over my most valuable assets. I built a safety net they knew nothing about, a parallel structure of holdings and investments that would protect me when the inevitable betrayal came. One night, I tracked Olivia to the same hotel where I'd caught them in my previous life. The Westlake, with its discreet valet service and private entrance for premium suites. I sat in my car in the parking lot watching her meet Ryan at the bar. Unlike last time, I felt strangely empty. Not heartbroken, not even angry. Just disappointed that some things couldn't be changed. People would always follow their nature. Through the window, I could see them leaning close, her hand on his arm, laughing at something he said. The exact scene that had played out before. Instead of confronting her, I returned home and finalized the last details of my exit strategy. When she came back late that night, full of transparent excuses about traffic and a meeting that ran long, I surprised her with champagne and strawberries. "What are we celebrating?" she asked, guilt momentarily forgot. "4 amazing years together," I said, raising my glass, "and to the future." Her relief was palpable. She believed she had gotten away with it, that I suspected nothing. 2 weeks later, I shocked her by suggesting we move up our wedding date. "Why wait?" I asked. "Let's do it in 3 months instead of 6. 3 months? That's so soon," she said, visibly thrown by the suggestion. "There's so much planning left to do. My team can handle it. I want you to be my wife sooner rather than later." The conflict played across her face. My unexpected enthusiasm complicated her plans with Ryan, but turning down an accelerated wedding would raise suspicions she couldn't afford. "If you're sure we can pull it off," she finally agreed, her smile not quite reaching her eyes. That night she made a call she thought I couldn't hear, whispering urgently to Ryan about a change of timeline. I smiled to myself. The trap was closing. As the wedding plans accelerated, so did Olivia's stress. She was juggling her relationship with me, her affair with Ryan, and the expectations of her family. The strain began to show in subtle ways, dark circles under her eyes, moments of distraction during conversations, the occasional snap of irritation over minor issues. "Are you happy, Liv?" I asked her one evening as she reviewed seating arrangements for the reception. She looked up, startled by the question. Of course I am. Why would you ask that? You seem tense lately, distant. She abandoned the seating chart and came to sit beside me, taking my hands in hers. I'm just stressed about the wedding. It's a lot to organize in 3 months, but I can't wait to be your wife. The lie came so easily to her lips. I wondered how many times she had lied to me in my previous life that I had never caught. A week before the wedding, I proposed a romantic getaway. Just one night to reconnect before the craziness of the wedding week. I have so much to do, she protested weakly. Your assistant can handle it. We need this, Liv, just you and me. She agreed reluctantly, unable to come up with a reasonable excuse. I booked a suite at the Westlake, the same hotel where she met Ryan. The same hotel where I had caught them before. When I told her where we were staying, I watched her face carefully, the flash of panic quickly controlled. Is that the best choice? I've heard the Marquis is more romantic. Trust me, I said, you'll love it. On the way to the hotel, she was quiet, checking her phone repeatedly. I pretended not to notice when she sent a text, angling the screen away from me. We checked in and went up to the suite. While Olivia freshened up in the bathroom, I ordered champagne and set my plan in motion. I have a surprise for you, I called through the bathroom door. Wear that blue dress I love. Now, I thought we were having dinner in the room. Change of plans, there's someone I want you to meet first, a potential investor who's only in town tonight. She emerged from the bathroom, suspicion warring with confusion. You invited a business meeting during our getaway. It's just drinks, an hour tops. He's bringing his wife too, you'll like her. I watched her calculate, knowing she had likely arranged to meet Ryan here. Now she would have to reschedule or cancel. Can I meet you downstairs? She asked. I need to make a quick call to my assistant about the flowers. Of course, take your time, I'll be in the bar. I went downstairs and took a seat at the bar with a clear view of the entrance and elevators. Exactly 30 minutes later, I watched as Ryan entered the hotel and took a seat at a corner table. He ordered a drink and checked his watch repeatedly. Olivia never came down. After 20 minutes, Ryan called someone, his expression darkening as he listened. He threw some cash on the table and left, shoulders stiff with annoyance. When I returned to the room, Olivia was dressed in the blue dress, her makeup perfect, her smile bright but brittle. Ready to meet your investor. He had to cancel, unfortunately, family emergency. I shrugged apologetically. Looks like it's just us after all. Relief flooded her face, followed quickly by a performance of disappointment for my benefit. That's too bad, but at least we have the evening to ourselves now. I poured her a glass of champagne, watching as she visibly relaxed, believing she had successfully navigated a potentially disastrous situation. To us, I said, raising my glass, and to trusting your instincts. She clinked her glass against mine, unaware of the double meaning in my words. To us. Later that night, as she slept beside me, I checked her phone. The text to Ryan canceling their meeting was still there, along with his angry response, just as I had predicted. The game was playing out exactly as I had planned. In 1 month, we would be married. In 3 months after that, on what would have been our 5th anniversary in my previous life, everything would come full circle. And this time, I would be the one walking away unscathed. The wedding went exactly as planned, a lavish affair that made the society pages. Olivia was the perfect bride, radiating happiness as we exchanged vows. Only I could see the calculation behind her smiles, the way her eyes still tracked Ryan among the guests. He had come as the plus one of a mutual friend, his presence a small power play that Olivia thought I hadn't noticed. I had not only noticed, but anticipated it, adjusting my own performance accordingly. I was the devoted groom, unable to take my eyes off my beautiful bride, oblivious to any undercurrents. Are you happy? I asked Olivia during our first dance, echoing the question she had asked me in my previous life right before everything fell apart. Completely, she lied smoothly, her arms tightening around my neck. You're everything I ever wanted. For 3 months after the wedding, I maintained the charade of the blissful newlywed while setting the final pieces of my plan in motion. I expanded my business aggressively, taking calculated risks that paid off spectacularly. I made myself indispensable to Olivia's family interests while secretly separating my most valuable assets from their reach. On what would have been our 5th anniversary in my previous life, I told Olivia I had to fly to Seattle for an emergency meeting with our biggest client. Today of all days, she protested, the picture of wifely disappointment. Can't someone else handle it? I wish they could, but they specifically asked for me. I'll make it up to you when I get back, I promised, kissing her forehead. We'll have a belated celebration this weekend, she softened, already calculating her free time. I guess I could use the day to catch up on some work myself. That's my pragmatic wife, I said with a smile. I love that about you. As my private car drove me away from our home, I checked my phone, monitoring the security system I had installed months earlier. Cameras positioned discreetly throughout our house fed directly to my secure server. I didn't fly to Seattle. Instead, I checked into a hotel downtown and waited. I had mentioned my trip in front of enough people to ensure word would get back to Ryan. Now it was just a matter of time. At 2:17 p.m., my phone alerted me to Ryan's car pulling into our driveway, right on schedule. I watched on my screen as Olivia welcomed him into our home, their body language shifting from friendly to intimate the moment the door closed. I had expected to feel something watching them together, perhaps a ghost of the pain from my previous life. Instead, I felt oddly clinical, like a scientist observing the predictable results of an experiment. They spent exactly 26 minutes talking in the living room before moving upstairs to our bedroom. I didn't watch that part. I didn't need to. Instead, I sent a text to my driver and began preparing for my return. 2 hours later, I walked through our front door. I moved quietly, though I didn't need to. The sounds coming from upstairs would have covered any noise I made. I stood at the foot of the stairs, listening to my wife and her lover in our bed. The same scene that had destroyed me in my previous life now felt like nothing more than the final confirmation I needed. I walked upstairs slowly, each step deliberate. The bedroom door was slightly ajar, providing a view of exactly what I had seen 5 years ago and yet a lifetime ago. Olivia and Ryan tangled in our sheets, unaware of my presence. I pushed the door open fully. "Honey, I'm home." Olivia's scream of shock was almost identical to the one in my memories. Ryan scrambled for his clothes just as panicked as before, but this time I didn't lose control. I didn't shout or threaten. I simply walked back downstairs and waited in the living room. 10 minutes later, Ryan slipped out the front door without making eye contact. Olivia came downstairs in a robe, her hair disheveled, eyes red but no tears, always calculating. "Alex, I can explain," she began, the same opening line from before. "I'm sure you can," I replied calmly. "You've always been good with explanations." She studied my face, thrown by my composure. "Aren't you angry?" "I'm not angry, Olivia, I'm done." I opened my briefcase and removed 3 envelopes, placing them carefully on the coffee table between us. "What are these?" she asked, making no move to touch them. "Divorce papers, already filed. The deed to this house transferred solely to my name 3 months ago, and notification that your family's company has been acquired by Westridge Industries." Her face drained of color. "You sold my family's company to our biggest competitor." "I didn't sell it. I acquired it first, then transferred ownership." A subtle difference, but an important one legally. I leaned forward slightly. "Did you really think I didn't know what was happening, that I was that blind?" "How long have you known?" she whispered. "About you and Ryan?" "From the beginning." I smiled without warmth. "I've known exactly who you are from the day we met." Confusion clouded her features. "That doesn't make sense. Why would you marry me if you knew?" "Let's just say I wanted to see how the story ended." I stood up, buttoning my suit jacket. "And now I have." Ryan, still partially dressed, edged toward the door. "I'm just gonna go." "Go ahead," I said. "She's all yours now, though I should mention she's about to be significantly less wealthy than she led you to believe." Olivia's head snapped up. "What are you talking about?" "The transfer of company ownership triggered several clauses in your family's investment structure. They're about to lose controlling interest in their 3 most profitable ventures. Your father will probably be forced out of his position by the board within a week." Her face contorted with rage and disbelief. "You can't do that. My father trusted you." "The way I trusted you?" I asked quietly. "This is business, Olivia, nothing personal," but it was personal. It was the culmination of a plan years in the making, orchestrated across 2 lifetimes. "You'll regret this," she hissed, her perfect facade crumbling. "My family has connections you can't imagine." "Had connections," I corrected gently. "And I've imagined quite a lot, actually, more than you know." I picked up my briefcase and walked to the door. "You have 48 hours to remove your personal belongings from the house. Anything left behind will be donated." "You're just going to walk away after everything we built together?" Her voice cracked, the first genuine emotion I'd heard from her. I paused at the threshold. "We didn't build anything together, Olivia. You were playing a role. I was making investments. Now both of us are cutting our losses." As I walked out the door, my phone buzzed with notifications. The news of Westridge's acquisition of Stanfield Industries, her family's company, had broken. The market was already reacting. By morning, the financial landscape would be permanently altered. I got into my waiting car, directing the driver to take me to my other residence, the penthouse Olivia knew nothing about. As the car pulled away, I glanced back at our house. Olivia stood in the doorway, her face a mask of shock and rage. For the first time since my rebirth, I felt something close to peace. Not happiness exactly, but completion. The circle had closed. The debt had been paid. I had once died watching her destroy everything I believed in. Now she would live watching me dismantle everything she valued. It wasn't revenge. It was justice. The natural consequence of choices made and remade across time itself. 6 months later, I was standing on the balcony of my new home overlooking the Pacific when my security system announced a visitor. The property was gated and private, accessible only to those who had been granted the entry code. I checked the camera feed on my phone, surprised to see Olivia standing at my gate. She looked nothing like the polished, confident woman I'd married. Her designer clothes had been replaced with simple jeans and a sweater. Her carefully maintained highlights had grown out, revealing her natural color. Even from a distance, I could see the changed posture, the diminished presence. 5 minutes, I said through the intercom, then took my time walking down to meet her in the garden rather than inviting her inside. She took in the expansive grounds, the modern architecture of the house perched on the cliffside. "You're doing well," she said, her voice lacking its usual assertive edge. "What do you want, Olivia?" She hesitated, hands fidgeting with the strap of her purse, a nervous gesture I had never seen from her before. "I wanted to see you, to talk." "About what?" "Everything, the divorce, the company, what happened to my family." I remained silent, forcing her to continue. "I lost everything," she said quietly. "My family barely speaks to me. They blame me for what happened with the company. Ryan left as soon as he realized there was no money coming. I had to sell my car, my jewelry." She stepped closer. "But the worst thing I lost was you." "Is that so?" I kept my voice neutral, watching her eyes for the familiar calculation, the manipulation that had once been second nature to her. "I know you won't believe me," she continued. "But somewhere along the way it became real. I do love you, Alex. I always will." For the first time, I saw something in her that might have been genuine emotion, pain that wasn't performed for effect, regret that wasn't tactical. "The man you married doesn't exist anymore," I replied. "He died the day he found out his entire marriage was a lie." "It wasn't all a lie," she insisted, tears forming. "Not at the end." "Which end?" I asked. "The first time you betrayed me or the second?" Her brow furrowed in confusion. "What do you mean the first time?" I shook my head. "It doesn't matter now, please," she whispered, reaching for my hand. I stepped back. "Give me another chance. I've changed. I've learned what really matters." "What really matters to you, Olivia, is being comfortable, being secure. You're not here because you love me. You're here because your other options didn't work out." "That's not fair," she protested. "I made terrible mistakes, I know that, but my feelings for you are real." I studied her face, the genuine pain, the desperation. For a brief moment, I felt a flicker of the old love, the possibility of forgiveness. In another life, perhaps I could have believed her. Perhaps we could have started again. But not in this one. "No," I said simply, her face crumpled. "There's nothing I can do to change your mind." "That's the irony, Olivia. If you had truly loved me before, you wouldn't need to change my mind now." She wiped away tears with the back of her hand. "What happens to us now? There is no us. There's you rebuilding your life however you can, and there's me living mine." "Without me," she said, the finality of it washing over her. "Without you," I confirmed. She nodded slowly, accepting what she could no longer change. "Can I ask you one thing before I go? How did you know about Ryan and me? About my family's company vulnerabilities? It's like you were always 3 steps ahead." I allowed myself a small smile. "Let's just say I've lived through this before." She didn't understand, of course. How could she? But something in my expression must have conveyed the depth of what I meant, because she stepped back, suddenly uncertain. "Goodbye, Alex," she said finally. "Goodbye, Olivia." I watched her walk back to her modest car, so different from the luxury vehicles she once drove. As she pulled away, I felt no triumph, no vindication, just a quiet acknowledgement that this chapter was finally closed. That evening, I sat on my balcony watching the sunset over the ocean. I deleted the last reminder of Olivia from my phone, a final surveillance report on her family's financial collapse. Their company had been broken up and sold for parts. Her father had taken early retirement rather than face the board. Her mother had withdrawn from their social circles, humiliated by their fall from grace. I had been thorough in my retribution, perhaps too thorough. The collateral damage extended beyond just Olivia, affecting people who had been peripheral to her betrayal. For a moment, I questioned whether I had gone too far, whether in pursuing justice I had become something too close to what I despised. But then I remembered how calculated their cruelty had been, how they had used me as a stepping stone, a means to an end. The future stretched before me, uncertain but mine alone. I was no longer defined by Olivia's betrayal, but by my own strength to overcome it. The scars remained, but they no longer bled. And in quiet moments like this, I found myself almost grateful for the pain that had forced me to become someone stronger than I'd ever thought possible. My phone chimed with a message from my assistant. A potential new client wanted to meet, a technology breakthrough that needed investment and guidance. Life moving forward, new opportunities arising, I texted back that I would take the meeting tomorrow. Then I set the phone aside and continued watching the sunset, allowing myself to simply exist in the moment. No past to avenge, no future to manipulate, just the present with all its imperfect beauty. 3 months later, I was reviewing acquisition proposals in my office when my assistant announced an unexpected visitor. Dr. Sarah Chen, a brilliant researcher whose work in artificial intelligence I had been following with interest. "Send her in," I said, curious about this unscheduled visit. She entered with confident strides, hand extended. "Mr. Walker, thank you for seeing me without an appointment. Dr. Chen, your reputation precedes you." Discussed her research, the implications of her discoveries, the potential applications. She was passionate, articulate, and refreshingly direct. "No games, no hidden agendas. Why bring this to me?" I asked finally. "There are dozens of tech investors who would jump at this opportunity." She considered her answer carefully. "Because you understand value beyond immediate profit. You build things that last." It was a simple answer, but it resonated. That evening, we continued our discussion over dinner. For the first time in years, possibly for the first time ever, I found myself engaging with someone without calculating angles or protecting vulnerabilities. 6 weeks later, we were still meeting regularly, our professional relationship evolving into something that felt suspiciously like friendship. "Perhaps something more. You're different from what I expected," Sarah told me one evening as we walked along the beach near my home. "Your reputation in the industry is somewhat intimidating." "Is that so? They call you brilliant but ruthless, the man who can see around corners," she smiled. "But there's more to you than that." I found myself wanting to tell her the truth about Olivia, about my strange journey through time, about the man I had been and the man I had become. "I wasn't always this way," I said instead. "I learned through experience, painful experience, from the look in your eyes when you say that." I nodded, not trusting myself to speak. "Whatever happened," she said, "it made you who you are now, and I like who you are now." The simple acceptance in her words broke something loose inside me, not the walls I had built exactly, but perhaps a door. Later that week, I saw Olivia one last time. She was entering a building downtown as I was leaving a meeting. Our eyes met briefly across the lobby. She looked better than when she had come to my home, more composed, though still diminished from her former glory. She gave me a small nod of acknowledgement, nothing more. I returned the gesture, and then we continued in our separate directions. No words needed, no closure beyond what we had already found. That evening, I told Sarah about my past. Not everything, of course, not the impossible parts about dying and returning, but enough for her to understand the scars I carried. "Thank you for trusting me with that," she said when I finished. No judgment, no pity, just acceptance. "It still affects me," I admitted. "I'm not sure I know how to trust completely." "Trust isn't an all-or-nothing proposition," she replied. "It's built over time, one moment of honesty at a time." As the sun set over the ocean, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple, I realized something profound. In gaining my revenge, I had risked becoming as calculating as Olivia had been. But in moving beyond it, in allowing myself this new beginning, I was choosing a different path. The scars would always be there, the memories, the lessons learned, but they didn't have to define every step forward. They could simply be part of the landscape I had traversed to reach this moment. I wasn't ready to love again, not yet. But for the first time since my rebirth, I believed it might someday be possible. And that possibility felt like the greatest victory of all.